Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Oh, wait, a couple more minutes here. Guys, remember tomorrow's the last day of the 9 weeks. So if you have any missing assignments, you got to get them turned in today or tomorrow, okay? It's do or die time here.
Miss Owenga,
Yes.
so yesterday I was doing the assignment and I got confused on one again.
Yeah.
On number 3 for yesterday's assignment.
All right, give me 1 second and I'll look it up. Okay, so what do you know about all the angles of a rectangle?
They're all the same size.
And what exactly are they going to be?
90.
Yep. So it says 2x minus 10 for that angle, so that you set it equal to 90.
Okay.
And then solve for x that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, guys, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We might have some more people joining us, but that's okay. Okay, so yesterday we were working on rectangles, right? And you had some homework problems for that. Then not a lot of you did that. So make sure you're getting that done, okay? Because we don't have much time left here. Today, we're going to add to that, we're going to talk about the rhombus. Okay, so I'm going to pull up my notes here. Oops, there's somebody else. All right, so we're going to talk about rhombuses today. Some people call them rhombuses, like plurals, rhombuses. Some people say rhombi. Either way is okay. Okay, but we're going to talk about rhombuses today. All right, so a rhombus is a special kind of parallelogram. Okay, so all of those parallelogram rules are still going to be in effect. So opposite sides are congruent, opposite angles are congruent, the diagonals bisect each other, but they actually have more properties that are special about them than just that. So here's what we're adding to that today. When you have a rhombus, all 4 sides are congruent. Okay, all 4 sides are congruent. The diagonals do bisect each other. Okay, That happened in our parallelogram as well. But the other thing that it does is it bisects the angles. Okay, so for instance, if this was, let's say 31 degrees, then this has to be 31 degrees. The other thing that happens is the diagonals are perpendicular, meaning those diagonals meet to make a right angle. So what happens for us then is we end up getting these right triangles. So if we know one angle, we can find out all the others because we have all these 90-degree angles here, right? So if this one's 31, I could take 180 minus 90 minus 31, and I can get that this is 59. Well, keep in mind that diagonal bisects my angle, so this also has to be 59. Okay, and remember how we talked about with parallelograms, opposite angles were congruent? Well, they're still congruent and it's still bisected. So if this is 59 and 59, the opposite has to be 59 and 59. If these two are 31, then these two down here have to be 31. Okay, so that's what we're going to be working on today. We're going to be looking at the properties of our rhombuses. And I have quite a few examples, some with algebra, some without. All right, so let's get started. So here's our first problem. So all of these figures are rhombi, okay, so they are rhombuses. So opposite sides are congruent, right? But we also remember that in a rhombus, all four sides are actually the same length. So what is the value of x, y, and z in this case? Oops. They all have to be 5. If this is 5, everything has to be 5. Okay, so that's straightforward kind of number one. We could also think about the side lengths if we were given expressions. So keep in mind, all four sides are the same. All four sides are the same length, meaning I can set my two equations equal to each other. So 7x plus 16 has to equal 4x plus 37. Okay, so now I can solve this. So I can subtract 4x, I'm sorry, from both sides. So I have 3x plus 16 equals 37. I can subtract 16 from both sides and I get 21. Divide by 3 and I have x equals 7. Okay, so you're going to be seeing some of these today too where we're bringing in the algebra. There's going to be some where it's very straightforward in terms of this side length is 10, what's everything else? Okay, but there are some that's just straightforward. All right, next let's talk about some diagonals. So remember, our diagonals do bisect each other. So these two are going to be congruent and these two are going to be congruent, just like with our parallelograms. So in this case, x is going to equal 6. Right? Because those two parts have to be congruent, and then y would have to equal 8. Questions about that one? All right, so if we have a problem like this, then keeping in mind that my diagonals are bisected, that means those two expressions have to be equal to each other. So I have 17x minus 82 equals 12x minus 17. So I can subtract 12x from both sides, and I have 5x minus 82 equals a negative 17. Add 82 to both sides. Oops, hold on, I gotta let somebody else in. So if I do that, I get 65, so 5x equals 65, and I can divide by 5, and I get 13. All right, so we've talked about side lengths, we've talked about diagonals bisecting each other, so let's talk about angles now. Okay, so remember how we talked about if we know one angle, we can figure out everything else. Okay, so keep in mind that my diagonals bisect the angles. All four of these angles here are going to be congruent. So this is 38, x has to be 38. Oops. Y has to be 38, this angle has to be 38. And just as a reminder, remember this is 90 degrees. So if you see a problem like this, keeping in mind that these two angles are congruent, that means my expressions have to be equal. So 8x minus 38 has to be equal to x plus 67. So I can subtract an x from both sides. And then add 38. I have 7x equals, let's see, that'd be 105, I think, right? So 105 divided by 7, no, mistyped it, gives me 15. All right, so all of these algebra problems really come back to thinking about the basic ones. What do we know about the properties? Okay, so what do we know about when diagonals intersect? What kind of angle do we have? We have a right angle. So that means that angle has to equal 90 degrees. Okay, this is always true for rhombi. So if we get an expression there, so I have 8x plus 58, we know this angle has to be a right angle, so it has to be equal to 90. So if I subtract 58 from both sides, I get 32. So then x has to equal 4. All right, last one. Last one. Going back to our parallelograms. Remember how we talked about opposite angles are congruent, right? Okay, but keep in mind, because of our parallel lines, remember we talked about parallelograms, the any two consecutive angles would add up to be 180 degrees. They're supplementary. Okay, so if they're in a row, they have to be supplementary. If they're opposite of each other, they're congruent. So that means that x plus 120 has to equal 180. So I can subtract 120, and I'll get x equals 60 degrees. All right, so last example. Okay, so these two angles are not opposite of each other, so they're going to measure different things, right? So this means that they have to be supplementary. So 13x plus 60, I have to add the other one now, so a negative 4x plus 93 has to equal 180. So 13 minus 4 gives me 9x, 60 plus 93 gives me 153. Okay, now I can subtract 153, and I have 9x equals, let's see, 27. Divided by 9, we have x equals 3. All right, so we talked about a lot of different properties there with the rhombus. Okay, we have supplementary angles, opposite angles are congruent. We talked about the right angle, right? The diagonals meet at a right angle. We talked about how the diagonals bisect each other. And we talked about how all of those angles are congruent. Wait, I missed it. Here we go. Talked about how the diagonals bisect the angles. And we talked about how all sides have to be congruent. All right, so this is what your homework is about today. Okay, I posted it to Google Classroom. This is what it's going to look like. Okay, so some of them are going to be very quick. So like I think like the first, I don't know, 6 or 7 maybe have just numbers. There's no calculating really. Like there's no expressions. So those should go very quickly. Honestly, you should be done with the first 7 in about 3 minutes. Okay, and that's if you're a slow typer. All right, so this is one of those picture puzzles. So if you're correct, part of the puzzle will be revealed. So what I want you to do is go ahead and start working on this. That way, if you have questions, I can help you. When you're done, you can leave, but you need to work on this first. All right, go ahead and get started.
Miss Owenga.
Yes.
So yesterday's problem on number 3, I did the problem, and I'm getting x equals 9.5. And I tried that, and it's not right.
Okay, so wait, you have 2x minus 10 equals 90,
Yeah.
right? So you have to
Yeah.
add 10 to both sides.
Yeah.
So you get 2x equals 100.
What?
That angle is 90 degrees.
Yeah.